Well, we were expecting this document to be out any time now, and that's exactly what has happened. The finance minister in the Lok Sabha has put out the economic survey, as we were telling our viewers. Sorry. That the survey is likely to project that for next year we will be in a double-digit growth of 11%. So let's get on board mightily. This is of course on expected lines. The IMF also was projecting that for next year we are on a good track as far as recovery is concerned. We are likely to be growing at 11%, and as far as nominal GDP is concerned, the economic survey is projecting a nominal GDP at 15.4%. So your first thoughts on what you make of the numbers, the calculations that finance ministry is working with?
Well, Ruchi, the numbers seem reasonable at the moment, because we remember we have going to contract 7.7% this year. So 11% when you compare with the contraction that we've seen in the current fiscal seems reasonable. Of course, all this is assuming that we don't see a second wave of COVID, which the West is also seeing. But fingers crossed we don't see that, and our vaccine rollout is reasonably successful. Remember, it will take a long time to really vaccinate everybody in this country. But if there is herd immunity, which also seems to be happening, these numbers of 11% real growth and 15%, 15.4% nominal seem reasonable, particularly in the context of the budget. It is a nominal rather than the real numbers that we need to look at, because our tax targets are built on that. So 15.4% seems reasonable. Of course, the big question mark is always about the disinvestment number. So we'll have to see what the government finally projects in its disinvestment target in the budget. But for now, whatever you told me from the economic survey seems a reasonable number. But I wonder whether there is a big theme in this year's economic survey. Remember, last year it was wealth creation and privatization. So do we have any more details on the big theme in this year's economic survey, Ruchi?
We just have the executive summary so far. We're awaiting more details. Mightily, in fact, the survey, the executive summary also says that the survey is expecting a rebound that will be led by low base effect and continued normalization of economic activity as well. The survey is predicting a V-shaped recovery that will, of course, be on account of the high frequency indicators that are also showing a positive movement, a positive recovery. Sectors such as and areas such as power demand, rail freight, e-way bills, GST collections, as well as steel consumption. In fact, they are also saying that the V-shaped recovery will be due to high vaccination drive, the robust recovery in the services sector, and the robust growth that we're seeing in consumption and investments as well. As far as the next 2 years are concerned, Maithili, the survey says that India will take about 2 more years to get back to the pre-COVID levels. In fact, earlier this week when we were also chatting with the chief economist at IMF, Geeta Gopinath, also said that for India to get back to pre-COVID levels, it is going to take at least 2 more years. At a time like this, Maithili, what do you think would be the key priorities that you feel that the government is going to undertake in their budget that is set for the 1st of February?
Rollout. So I think the government will have to set aside a considerable sum of money for the vaccine rollout. Remember, even if we get the states to share the burden, which they must, it will be a humongous amount of money if we really want to vaccinate even about, say, 50 to 60% of the population of this country. The second big demand on government's finances would be on infrastructure spend. Remember, the government is looking in terms of income support, but rather than outright income support, which is like what the US is trying to do, we cannot afford to do that. So if we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, that would be the best. So if the government spends on infrastructure, then simultaneously you will create infrastructure, and at the same time people will be getting incomes and jobs, and hence you will get the consumption push. So I think these should be the 2 main thrust areas of the government in this present budget. 1, healthcare spend, especially on the vaccination, and 2, capex on infrastructure spending. Because as we've seen, the private sector investment is not going to happen. I think this is the time, and I think repeated voices have called out for the fact that you forget about the fiscal deficit for now. Yes, have a road back to come back to fiscal prudence later. But for now, don't worry unduly about the fiscal deficit. You can afford to borrow. Interest rates are very low. All over the world, countries are borrowing, and public debt to GDP ratio is bound to rise. But as the economy recovers and GDP rises, these ratios will come down, both the fiscal deficit as well as your public debt to GDP ratio. So this is what the government needs to do, and I think finally they have understood. Because from November onwards, we are seeing a sharp uptick in government spending. So these, I think, should be the two key areas. And remember, this morning, we also heard Prime Minister Modi say that we've already seen 4 or 5 mini budgets. So the budget on the 1st February should also be seen not as a big bang budget, but as part of the series of budgets that we've seen, a part of the shrinkla is what he called it.
Right. In fact, the economic survey summary also indicates, Maithili, that the agriculture sector will continue to cushion the Indian economy as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic shock as well. So at a time like this, when the survey also is betting hope on rural recovery, on the strength of agriculture sector, how important do you think is going to be the kind of allocations that the budget is, of course, going to make towards the agriculture sector, towards rural economy, towards, social sector schemes such as Manrega as well?
Well, I think the government will be particularly conscious of making the right moves in the agriculture sector, particularly because they've come in for so much flack on the farm laws, which I think were very, the laws are very warranted. They were long overdue. But the government perhaps has not been able to sell it successfully. So here is an opportunity for the government to show that, yes, these farm laws have been passed. Yes, they are necessary. But if for whatever reason, because of misunderstanding by our farmer brothers, here is a statement of our intent that, we have their interests at heart. So we will increase the allocation for agriculture. So I do think we will see a sharp increase in allocation for agriculture.
Okay, all right. We are, of course, awaiting more details from the economic survey. It has been tabled in the Lok Sabha, but a lot of other details will be out when the survey is tabled in the Rajya Sabha. The Lok Sabha has been adjourned for now. We are, of course, awaiting when the survey will be tabled, as I told you, in the Rajya Sabha. And then the Chief Economic Advisor, Krishnamurthy Subramaniam, will also be, hosting a press conference as well. So we're on standby for that. Maithili, appreciate you taking your time out and making us and helping us get a lot of sense out of these developments. With that,